Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government.
Here in Massachusetts, we have 157 land trusts. That's a land trust for every 2 towns. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah, right in the document, Agenda 21, they're openly calling for the abolishment of private property. And it's also on the Georgia Guidestones, New World Order 10 Commandments, that somebody should destroy. But, I mean, like, it is disgusting. And they don't want you owning your own property, or even a car at that.
Yeah. I mean, things like that, people often say that's conspiratorial, but let's look a little closer to home here in Massachusetts. And as a Republican, as you mentioned, I'm the president of the Massachusetts Republican Assembly. We exist to reform the GOP. And our own general counsel for the GOP in Massachusetts in 2010 applied to HUD for a grant. And in this grant application, in Section 3.1 in particular, he calls out for those things, those resources that he's going to use and incorporate into Central Mass and throughout the state. And in it, he refers to Agenda 21 as that landmark policy document. And of course, ICLEI, today they call themselves ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability. But when they were created, and their function to this day is under the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives.
And it's communism. And we know the CFR, they're the ones with the Kremlin Pratt House in New York City. They created the United Nations, or the League of Nations, and pushed the United States into it. And it's all communism. Agenda 21 is today's 1930s eugenics.
Yeah, we got to stop letting people say that that can't affect us here, that a UN document like that doesn't have the power of law. Well, it doesn't until we put it into enforceable law ourselves, which is what's happening. That's the UN's global to local plan, is to go right around legislative oversight and the bright light of day and go right into people's communities. That's what ICLEI does. And by virtue of taking their policy, we turn it into enforceable law in our own communities on town hall floor. We have got to get on those local boards.
Absolutely. And the work you're doing is great, Dave. And yeah, we got to spread more awareness about Agenda 21. And even though we cover it here a lot on Infowars.com, we still don't cover enough. I mean, a lot of people out there think Agenda 21, if they know Agenda 21, it gets disguised as Greenpeace, Saving Mother Earth, and they got all the non-government NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and to promote this stuff. Oh, we got to save the Earth, so this is such a good thing. And those people, they're conspiracy theorists talking about this. So, Dave, you're a conspiracy theorist, and you should be a terrorist, you know. And yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And speaking of a community, we were talking earlier. A gentleman by Vincent DeVito, you were talking to me about him, Institute of Energy and Sustainability. What's your take on this guy now?
Well, he's a Mass GOP general counsel as well, and he is also the director of that nonprofit group. And all they do is spin off green groups and green business. And again, it's a top-down, complete government-driven economy here. And he's bringing this into the state. He specifically applied for that grant and named Agenda 21 as one of the resources that he was going to incorporate into that social networking scheme. It's unbelievable. So it's not
folks, there's his contact information right up on the screen there, Vincent DeVito. I mean, like, give this guy a call and tell him, hey, we don't want Agenda 21. Even if you don't live in Massachusetts, folks, give this guy a call right now. Leave a voicemail. Flood his mailbox. Say, you know what? We know about your Agenda 21. We don't want it, and we are not going to accept it. Bottom line. And let these people know. And it takes the citizens to stand up to say, you know, to these elected officials, whoever this guy is, no. Bottom out, no. We do not want Agenda 21. We know your plans. We know your agendas. We don't want it. Bottom line.
Yep, go right to the GOP's website. The state committee's there. They should be aware of it. We had an anti-Agenda 21 resolution down at the convention. Now, I am one of the 17 Massachusetts delegates that got chopped. I was a delegate in 2008, and I kept my word and did my duty. This time, they chopped me.
I heard about that because you supported Ron Paul.
Well, I've been a Ron Paul supporter since, you know, the late 80s. But nonetheless, I got up there and I pledged in front of the people in my district that I would go down and vote for Romney on that first vote. But I was bringing with me a message of liberty and private property rights, because I was going to make sure that Agenda 21 resolution grew some legs.
Exactly, and people need to be aware of Agenda 21. You do such a great job. And I want to talk about, which I was talking to you earlier in Rhode Island, they had Replan and Sustainability Development Conference, and this is going on all over the country. And again, where you were talking about how they have these conferences for, for all the rich people, all the people who run the state, to say, oh, we're going to bring in these development projects, to, we're going to confine all the humans into these, to sell your private property, to give up all your assets, and we don't want you owning property on the beachfront. We don't want you owning a house out in the wilderness. We want you in this metro zone, and it's for the environment. You're doing a good thing for humanity, and they brainwash these people. And if you want to give a description what these conferences are about.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is classic visioning and consensus, and they're shifting away from that language now because we're on to them, basically. But the most modern language, they call them charrettes. And it's really, they go out and they look for people in your community quite often that are longtime selectmen. A business has been in town for a long time, but always someone who's already on board with what they're doing. They call these people stakeholders. And when they go in, they have these visioning sessions, and they generate a consensus. And what comes out of these consensus is turned into a press release and marketing and propaganda. And pretty soon, they're speaking for the whole community. Now, I went to one of these. They sent some stuff to my office, and not only are they trying to regionalize the conservation agent's position.
Is that the application? We got that on screen, if you could put that on screen, guys. The application for the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Yeah, no, that's
it's in the documents.
That's a social networking grant application to reach out to like-minded groups, and it's part of this consensus building within the entire region that Mr. DeVito works in. Now, I went to one, and there were 43 towns in my district, and there were 5 people at this meeting, 2 of them from Northampton, 2 from Amherst, and myself. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the People's Republic of Amherst, but they fly the UN flag in front of Town Hall, if you can believe that.
Oh, that thing is a trash bag. I mean, I did a report on the UN flag at a Korean War memorial, even though the UN was involved with the war or whatever, but to hang that trash bag on American soil is a smack in the face to anybody who served our country. Yep. And everything our founding fathers stand for, that flag is total disrespect. That flag symbolizes pure evil, bottom out pure evil, and it is an apostasy, epiphany, whatever you want to call it. It is highly disgusting to even have that flag in this American soil country. I mean, it makes me sick. It really does. I'm lost for words about that flag.
Now, the town right next door, where the other 2 representatives were from, Northampton. Now, I got an article recently where they're actually touting the fact that they have locked up 20% of the landmass of that town, off limits or highly restricted to human access and all resource extraction. Now, that's nothing to be proud of. They're economically hobbling that property forever, and forever is a very long time.
Well, they did that up in the Quabbin, because I lived in Ware for a while. The Quabbin, where they confiscated the whole town. It gave the town a week's notice. I forgot when this was back in about 80 years ago, whatever. They kicked everybody out of the town. You got a week to get out. They built a giant reservoir for Boston. That's what, how many miles away? But most of the land that they didn't develop the reservoir for, they still got it restricted, and you can't walk on that property.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But, I mean, there's always going to be those that would argue that we needed to do that as a water resource, but there are land grabs out there that are simply not even called for. And if you look around the country, there are states where 75–80% of the land is federally managed, federally controlled.
Oh, Arizona and all those western states, I mean, you're not allowed. Big signs everywhere. Government property, no trespassing. Violators will be shot on sight. This is crazy. And I want to switch gears a little bit, and it's Agenda 21. The more of a diabolical plot of Agenda 21. Now on the inoculations, the eugenics, depopulation, one-child policy. I want to get your take on all this.
Well, I'm not a big vaccine fan anyways, and I don't know if I'd want to wallow in the weeds there. But when it comes to population control, I often say to people, I said, what would be the effect if we made sure that we had an extremely well-funded Planned Parenthood and a national health care plan that only cared about the productive? what would that do to a population over time? And all of a sudden people get saucer-eyed and say, wow, I guess it isn't so crazy that people higher up who think they are, they know better might have a plan that could actually be actionable.
Oh, yeah, and they call for fertility control right in John P. Holdren's Ecoscience, pages 837. And anybody wants to check that out, that's also part of Agenda 21. And they're calling for depopulation of the planet. And like I was talking to you before the show, anybody who's seen the 2010 TED conference meeting, Bill Gates openly stating, which the Gates Foundation is one of the leading companies that give out vaccines to third world countries. He's openly stating, to reduce the world's population with this mathematical equation, to reduce the CO2, we need to reduce the world's population by coming up with newer vaccines. But no, they're safe for you, though. They're good for you. And Obama, you know, on record said he would sign the one-child policy proposed by China, execution vans, all that draconian stuff. I mean, this is Orwell's 1984, Dave. I mean, like, I can't say enough. Agenda 21 covers all aspects of this Orwellian world, this communist system.
Well, speaking of Obama, and this is something that people should have fresh in their mind, he just passed, or not passed, he wrote himself out an executive order recently for that rural council. Now, he came out and they publicized that as only affecting about 16% of the population, but that's as important as our farmers, and we got to stand behind them. Well, when the government's own numbers say that only 6% of the country is urban, that means that 94% of the land mass represents that 16% of the population. What a giant land grab that was.
Oh, yeah, they want to stand behind the farmers, all right? That's why they're going confiscating raw milk, raw cheese everywhere. If you're growing crops that are non-GMO, you're growing organic, you're a terrorist. You need psychological evaluation in some parts of this country. They're just attacking the farmers everywhere. If you're you're non-Monsanto, non-GMO, you don't belong here, bottom line. And they're confiscating farms all over the place in the sake of national security to beef up the borders near Canada. You know, it's crazy.
They're doing it under the name of preservation. They're putting farmers in stress, so they need grants, they need something to stay alive. And these land trusts will come in and say, hey, we'll purchase your development rights. You can keep farming and do what you're doing right now. You just can't build houses and factories and, you know, all this other baloney. Well, you know what? They reference something called best management practices, and they only reference the title of that document. And what happens every few years, they get a few brainiacs from some think tank or from some university, and they tinker with the best management practices, the standards within them. So you take a farmer that'll go out and look at a property and say, yeah, I think I can make a go of that. I can possibly live with those restrictions. And then he signs on. That bundle of property rights goes out the window, and then the green coats get in there and they tweak the standards to say, well, now we want a 500-foot buffer, dust buffer around every field. No longer can you mow within 500 feet of a road or a residential property. Well, how many bales of hay or bushels of produce is that? And how many farmers will that one change alone put out of business? It's incredibly, it is diabolical.
It is, and what they do, too, is they put strings on the farmers, and our chicken, I don't know what chicken's worth, $5, $6, but they make them under these regulations. They have to have a tracking chip on every animal, and the tracking chips cost more than the animal itself. I mean, how is farmers supposed to make a good profit? How are they supposed to make a living? That's why farms are closing down all the time. We had a problem right in Agawam, Massachusetts. Remember that guy ran for governor, mayor, I'm sorry? I forgot his name. Well, the state came in and confiscated his goat farm. They took his goats. I don't know if you remember that in the news, and I wish I could remember the guy's name, but I mean, it just shows you the power grab that's going on. You can't own farmland. You can't own any land that violates the the environment. You know, it's just crazy.
No, it is.
I don't even know how to describe it. And any websites you want to promote right now? And you know, your website. I know you got a couple of Facebooks out there. And Dave here does a lot of conferences, folks. If you want to YouTube him, Dave Kopaz. I mean, like he's got a lot of conferences he does. You do 2-hour segments easily. And I wish I had more time with you, brother. And a lot of great information. Yeah, if you want to give us some your Facebooks and everything else.
Yeah, well, my Facebook page is, I usually post almost everything I'm doing. I do a radio show and a TV show on community access myself, so I post that type of stuff up there.